We are slaying monsters.
Don't let the ghosts and the ghouls disturb you, darling.
I don't remember how much I've talked about how I used to do magic. I know I talked a little bit about it before, but I don't know how extensively I talked about it. I don't remember anymore. I used to do nursing home magic shows. Magic shows for local nursing homes. Man, those old ladies were dirty. They were dirty, dude. Like,
well, what else? I mean, yeah, I get it. I would be too. You know, you gotta have your fun here. You had this strapping young lad coming in with a suitcase full of tricks and who knows what else. Yeah, it's
Well, also, like, this was when I was in high school. They probably loved how kind of innocent I was. I had that, like, magic wand that if you gave it to somebody else, it would droop. Yeah. You know? So, like, you put the magic wand in somebody else's hand. They're like, oh, it's never happened before. I feel like I've told this story before.
Well, I don't think on here you haven't.
Okay, yeah.
But you do corner me and tell me this story every single day. So, you know, that's why.
Also, like, cutting people in half with ropes and stuff. So you're like wrapping your arms around them and you're like tying it off and stuff like that.
Very sensual.
Yeah, it really is.
When I think of magicians, I think extremely sexy and sensual.
I mean, you should.
Yeah, you definitely should.
We're a hot bunch, dude. That's super hot. Like, ooh, baby. Ooh.
They're always depicted so horribly.
What are you talking? Everybody hates magicians.
Everybody, I'm telling you, that's what I'm saying. Everybody hates them. They're not like who's the sexy one? Who's
DMC.
The sexy?
Well, drum them on coats.
He's very sexy.
He's cool.
There's also David Blaine. He's kind of cute.
Yeah.
I'm into David Blaine.
Well, and David Copperfield was like a heartthrob back in the day.
Yeah, I guess he had to be in the 80s to understand that one.
Yeah, I mean, David Copperfield is very 80s hot. Like,
he's 80s hot, exactly.
Yeah, he's like MacGyver hot, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but no, he was, because David Copperfield used to bring people up on stage and do the whole like dancing rose thing. He would like make the paper rose for them, and then he would light it on fire. And then it would become a real rose, and it was like, oh my god! And that was like a super sexy thing.
Yeah,
totally.
I'm old enough to remember watching David Copperfield on television.
I saw David Copperfield live.
Oh, okay. Wow, aren't you special?
It was like one of the highlights of my childhood because I was so into magic, and I got to see him live, and I was so excited. I think I was having trouble sitting still, and so my mom was like, "If you don't sit still, he's not gonna fly."
Oh, did you believe in magic at that time? Did you believe it was all real?
No. I don't. Because my introduction to magic was with a book of illusions, the Klutz Book of Magic, in fact.
Okay.
So like that was what got me started, was the behind the curtain type of thing. So I guess there might have been a period when I was like really, really young, but I don't know of any time in my life where I saw magic illusions and didn't at least know it was fake. You know, that it was all tricks.
What we'll probably be talking about today are the instances where people believe that it's real.
I want sometime to do a history of magic type of series because I'm so invested in it. And we've been dabbling in it a little bit with first the Fox sisters. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about that. It keeps cropping up in the spiritualism movement.
You can't get away from it.
You can't. You really can't. And then in this series, we're going to talk about a very particular subset of that as well that came right after the Fox sisters and started to influence the turn of the century into some of these like bigger stage. Then you'll get to vaudeville, and see, I'm getting on it already, but like we got to introduce ourselves.
We do. Oh my goodness. This is Slaying Monsters. Hello, everybody. I'm EJ, and across the table is
the marvelous Matt.
Oh, the marvelous Matt.
That was my name. That was my magician name, Marvelous Matt. Yeah.
Walking up on stage in front of 12 people is the marvelous Matt.
You laugh, but it was kind of that way. Because also, when you do things for these homes, like people will... They don't have to... It's not like they shuffle everyone there and, like, strap them to the chairs. They're like, you gotta watch the magic show now. So, like, it was just kind of whoever showed up.
Yeah.
They, you know, whatever. And people would totally fall asleep. There's some people that just conked out. And we would joke about
wheel
that,
in and
too.
out, probably.
Yeah. Mhm.
Amazing.
Yeah. It was actually really fun. I remember distinctly doing a couple where I was at dinners or banquets, and you would just table hop and do like
that's
little
fun.
close-up illusions. That was the best. That was probably the best experience of all.
You're really good at that too.
Yeah.
You almost got one of my family members who never swears to drop an F-bomb with one of your tricks.
Wait, what? I don't remember.
She did.
This.
She actually did drop an F-bomb. She was visiting, and you did King of the Card Sharps or something.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
And she
yes.
she said, "What the fuck?" And I've never heard her say anything like that before.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
That was
Her
a pretty
reaction
incredible
was the
experience,
greatest.
actually. Yeah.
It was awesome. So anyway, so this is part 2
Yes.
of Egypt. That's all I know. What is the title?
I'm calling it The Curse of the Pharaohs.
Oh, right, The Curse of the
Yeah, The
Pharaohs.
Curse of the Pharaohs.
The Curse of the Pharaohs.
Yay,
part 2.
we got there. Yay.
We got there.
So today, I'm going to be referencing Madame Blavatsky, The Mother of Modern Spirituality by Jeremy P. Tarcher, and The Life and Secrets of Almina Carnarvon by William Cross. And I'll also be using The Secrets of the Fakir of Ava by Joe Nickel, published on May 29th, 2019 in the Center for Inquiry. It's always nice to see Joe Nickel talking about something other than owls.
He probably weaves an owl in there somewhere. They had owls in the Egyptian hieroglyphs, I think.
They did.
Yeah.
There's an Egyptian owl god, and that god's name is Ammit. A-M-M-I-T. Ammit.
Ammit. That's really awesome.
Mm-hmm. When we last left archaeologist Howard Carter, he's down on his luck, you may remember. Mm-hmm. After a fight with some abusive tourists, he has resigned his position as the inspector of monuments for the Egyptian Antiquities Service. He's been living in Cairo selling watercolors, guiding tourists, and kind of arranging some black market sales, too. But we will leave him on the streets of the bazaar for a moment, and we're going to travel to Mayfair, England. And we are going to meet a man with a ridiculous name.
As they go sometimes back then.
George Edward Stanhope Molyneux Herbert, also known as Lord Carnarvon, lives a life of adventure.
George, huh? That's such a weird name.
We're just going to call him Lord Carnarvon,
Oh,
because
okay,
that's pretty
Lord
much how he
Carnarvon.
went the whole
Okay.
time. So at this point, and this is right around late 1890s, early 1900s, he has survived an elephant attack in Africa. He has crossed the Atlantic on a sailboat. He owns a motor car, which is only the third motor car registered in England. This is like an extravagant lifestyle for someone at this time, okay?
Yeah.
And at least part of the reason that he's able to do this, now he's independently wealthy on his own. I mean, he's a lord after all. But it's also partly funded by his wife, Almina, the Countess of Carnarvon. She happened to be the illegitimate daughter of a Rothschild.
Oh, okay.
And as such, she received a gigantic dowry because basically they wanted to keep all of it quiet.
Oh.
Because it would look very bad if a Rothschild had an illegitimate daughter and that was like publicly exposed. So they kept funneling Almina money.
Oh.
And Lord Carnarvon just sort of did whatever the fuck he wanted to do with it.
Man, that would have been nice to be Almina.
Yeah.
Holy crap.
Yeah, so they are just like blazing their way across the world. Mm-hmm. Carnarvon gets into boxing. Not that he himself is not boxing, but he is watching boxing. He's watching horse racing, and he starts raising his own thoroughbred horses. And those horses ended up winning the Ascot Stakes, the Stewart's Cup, the Doncaster Cup, and the City and Suburban, which are premier races at the time.
Okay.
all of this, I mean, he's betting on it like a madman. In fact, he's betting on anything and with anyone who's fool enough to go along with him.
Well, he's got nothing to really lose. I mean,
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
When you have money like that, I mean, I'm pretty sure that he actually had a gambling addiction. And the thing is, he had enough money to learn how to be great at it.
oh yeah. Yeah, you can take those losses and you can really learn.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it didn't matter. He would bet on horses, he would lose, he would learn. He would bet again, he would lose, he would learn. And then he started to win. And then he started to be like, I can raise my own horses. I can learn this whole system inside and out. Same deal with boxing. And he's like, oh, I'll bet on this and I'll bet on this. And I see what makes this fighter a good fighter. And so he's gambling as much as he wants with no real, not loss, no real consequence. No consequence. Yeah. His friend, Sir Maurice Hankey, said he was known to have pitted his brains against and outwitted the toughest bookies and crooks on the turf. I do not know whether he is consistently cunning or often ingenious. Does that make sense to you? Consistently cunning or often ingenious?
Yeah, I think so.
Basically,
Yeah.
he's saying, I don't know whether he's smart or sneaky.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you need to have both to be good at it.
Yeah.
It reminds me of what's the Adam Sandler movie? Uncut Gems.
Oh, Uncut Gems. Yeah. Uncut
Yeah.
Gems is a great, yeah.
Yeah, I can see this
great
being
movie.
like an Uncut Gems of the late 1800s. When is this? When is this taking place again?
We're talking like late 1890s, early 1900s.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, so Uncut. So okay, I'm gonna picture
That's-
Adam Sandler in this role now.
To be perfectly
Yes.
honest, that is not a terrible comparison. Like Adam Sandler and Uncut Gems
Yeah.
seems like Lord Carnarvon to me, honestly.
Okay, all right,
Yeah.
that's who I'm imagining.
Like any gambler who's really good at their trade, Carnarvon, he's not afraid of taking risks. And this daredevil nature left him in sometimes compromising situations. So take the story of his sister, the one that she told in her eulogy to him, where he was in Italy and he had anchored his yacht, because of course he has a yacht. He anchored his yacht off the coast of Portofino and he chartered a rowboat to ferry him back and forth. We're talking like, I'm thinking of the end of White Lotus season 2, that sort of vibe,
Yeah,
right?
totally.
While he's in town, he's gambling. It's a resort type of town, Portofino. So he's gambling. He likely had a pretty good run because, like I said, he's pretty good at it. And he boarded his rowboat to go back to his yacht with a bag full of money.
Okay.
But on the return trip, the two men piloting the boat, they stop in the middle of the harbor and they try to rob him and say, if you don't give us that money, we're just going to strand you out here. Look around. It's kind of an Always Sunny type of look around. There's nothing but ocean. There's an implication here,
Exactly.
right?
You've got to give us your money, right?
So they threaten, we're going to throw you overboard and take the money if you don't comply with us. And Carnarvon says, all right, there's no need to be hasty. Just pass me the bag and I'll hand out the money between the two of you. And they pass him the bag and he opens it. But instead of handing out the money, he pulls a pistol from the bag and demands that they continue to his yacht or he'll shoot them and row back himself.
That's awesome. Smart.
Yeah.
So they handed him a bag with a pistol in it.
Yes. Well,
Okay.
they didn't know that there was a pistol. He just kept it with his winnings.
Very smart.
Yeah, he reached into the bag with all of his winnings, pulled out a pistol.
You're not going to mess with somebody like that. I mean, come on. The guy's like, he's thought of this.
Yeah.
If he thinks of all of the intricacies of gambling and does it well enough to win, he's also thought about how to protect his winnings.
Well, and that's the thing,
on
like,
now.
he's been around, right?
Yeah.
Like, he's done this a lot. He knows what he's doing. He's used to this shit. And he's probably used to you, like, the vultures
Yeah.
that come after him and try to rob him.
Yeah, totally.
Obviously, he's traveling with a pistol in his bag,
Yeah,
right? So,
who knows?
yeah. According to his sister, he always recalled this story with a smile on his face. So, like, not only is this guy likely a gambling addict, but he's also really into this daredevil lifestyle. Like, this is what he likes to do. In 1901, Lord Carnarvon's life of adventure would take a catastrophic turn. He's driving his car in Germany, and he came over a hill, and, he couldn't see what was on the other side of the hill, but as he crests it, he finds himself face to face with a herd of oxen that are crossing the road. He has no time to brake, and he swerves off the road and flips his car. Now, the car crashes, it starts to burn, and Carnarvon has been knocked unconscious inside the car. Now, luckily, one of his employees who was along with him managed to drag him to safety and extinguish his burning clothes. But the Earl ended up with a broken wrist, severe burns, and respiratory complications. So he has breathing problems.
From now on.
Yeah, even after extensive healing and recovery, his lungs are just forever compromised.
Ugh, okay.
He would get chest infections that were made like 100% worse by the climate in England because, of course, it's like cold and damp there 75% of the time, right?
Yeah.
So his physician recommended that he travel to a warm, dry climate to try to alleviate his lungs, at least in like the winter months. You can come back to England when it's warm and sunny, but in fall, winter, early spring, you got to find a climate that's better for you and your breathing.
How nice for rich people to be able to do that.
And I mean, that's the thing, dude. He's got the wealth. He could relocate fucking anywhere he wants.
Yeah. This is just another example, though, of that dichotomy. It's like if you have lung issues and you're poor, like, sorry.
And you probably did, because at the time, a lot of people were just working in factories. You're making coal, you're making iron. Oh, yeah. You're just breathing all that shit in. Your job is giving you the problem. Yeah, totally. He decided to set his sights on Egypt. The desert, he thought, was going to be a real match for his compromised health. And it just so happened that Western influence was in the process of transforming that region into more of a tourist destination. Now, we talked last episode about how Gaston Maspero was the first person to come in and monetize Egypt and essentially say, oh, if you want to come here and you want to see the sights, that's fine. You just have to pay a visitor fee. Start of the tourism industry there. By this point, archaeologist Flinders Petrie, who was a tutor of Howard Carter for a time, he was calling Egypt the, quote, resort of the invalid. So you're seeing sporting clubs popping up. And alongside that, you have locals who are starting to like milk the tourists out of their money, right? Anybody who goes there, it's really rare for you to see a foreigner who doesn't have an attendant of some kind. Even like just walking from their coach to their hotel, people are going to be like, oh, let me take your bags. Let me do this. Let me do all these things for you. As far back as the 1870s, Egypt had been offering package tourism deals, thanks to this revolutionary idea by an Englishman named Thomas Cook. You've never heard of Thomas Cook, have you? Okay. Thomas Cook is one of the founders of modern tourism. See, under Cook's plan, coupons for restaurants came complimentary with hotels. And if you were a group, you got a discount on your stay.
He's the founder of Groupon.
Exactly. No, he's not Groupon.
From 1870. No. It's an old business.
But it's essentially that. It's that, right?
Yeah.
Like, his ideas paved the way for commercialized mass tourism.
I didn't even know that like tourism was a thing until...
Oh, yeah.
When I think of tourism, I mean, I know it was only for the rich back then, but I still think of it as being a very new endeavor.
This was the dawn of it.
Okay.
Thomas Cook essentially started the first travel agency with his ideas here that you can take groups of people and we're going to help locate you in the right place. And we're going to negotiate with the restaurants of like, oh, you stay at this hotel and you get a coupon for this restaurant and all of that stuff. Yeah.
Smart guy.
By the end of the century, his travel agency has tours going up and down the Nile, ferrying people from all over the Middle East.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Carnarvon, of course, is drawn to this buzzing social culture. But there's another possibility that he was interested in Egypt, and that is one born from his more paranormal beliefs. Okay, so situation check, right? This is now 1903. Okay. Maggie Fox, the famed medium sister and last founder of the spiritualism movement, died about a decade before this.
Okay.
For a more in-depth look into their lives, check out our Fox Sister series.
Yeah. He's awesome.
Now, the paranormal movement that they unleashed on the world is in full swing at this point. So you have people's parlors full of mediums and psychics performing seances. They're doing palm readings. They're doing tarot. They're doing spirit writing. We talked about all of this stuff in our other series.
Right.
And this is where the line between spiritual medium and magician starts to get really, really blurry. Because we're about to see the rise of the most ironically named magicians in history, the fakirs, or the fakers. So,
but that's not how you pronounce it, though.
No, it's fakir, yeah.
Okay.
Enter Isaiah Harris Hughes, better known by his stage name, the Fakir of Ava. Now, he was born in Essex, England, and then he moved to Buffalo, New York in the mid-1800s.
Woohoo, go Bills!
I'm not sure he was a Buffalo Bills fan at that time.
Probably was a huge Buffalo Bills fan. Kidding me? Big Doug Flutie and Josh Allen fan.
Josh Allen.
Huge.
This is the mid-1800s. He's in upstate New York just in time for the rise of...
The Buffalo Bills.
No.
The rise of the burned over
district. Yeah, the burned over district. The explosion of spiritualism that's going on for some reason in upstate New York at that time.
Wild.
With the Fox sisters, they were holding spiritual rappings, table turnings, and Hughes wants to capitalize on this. And he's a magician. So he feels that he needs to find a gimmick that he would hang his shows on. You know, you have these medium sisters who are talking to spirits. He doesn't want to go that route. He has to find some other way to bring people into his shows. What do you think he does?
Snake charming.
You know, you're not 100% off board. That is something that a lot of the fakirs do.
Okay, but it's upstate New York. So porcupine.
Well,
charming.
No. So first, he tried door prizes.
Oh.
So if you came to his show, he would raffle off jewelry, sewing machines, pianos, and even livestock.
That's awesome.
Imagine it's like 1860, you go to see a magic show and you walk away with like a pig.
I love that. That's so adorable. What if you get a piano and a chicken? Like, do you get like that's when you win the day right there, because the chicken
can play piano.
Yeah, and you get a discount probably on the piano because the chicken shot all over the piano.
I mean, I would assume that it did.
I hope that the animals were let loose all over the prizes, because that would be amazing. I would just watch that. I would just go to say, I don't care about your show. I just want to watch the animals.
You have just this like pig running by a sewing machine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or the jewelry. You just put the jewelry on the animals. You have like a goat that's wearing a necklace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not abusive or anything. That's great. It's a great idea.
So this became a huge selling point for his shows because, I mean, who doesn't want free stuff at the time, right?
Anytime.
And then he also changed his persona. Now, magicians often take up pseudonyms like the Marvelous Matt. But he took it to a whole other level. And he called himself Pen Yan, the Fakir of Ava, Chief of Staff of Conjurers to His Sublime Greatness, Nanka of Aristophae.
What the fuck?
That was his name. That's his stage name.
That is so late 1800s.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this character that he made up, he claimed he came from Burma, and he was an expert in the mystical arts.
Did he actually claim to be Burmese?
Oh, yeah. He wore, and this is a quote, dark makeup and exotic clothing. So he essentially performed a blackface.
Yeah, something like that. Wow. Yeah. That's, okay. Also typical, probably, of the time.
And this was a thing that magicians start doing this. Hughes inspired a legion of imitators. Claimed to be, trained or imbued by ancient mystical arts from foreign magical lands. And that was this kind of concept at the time, that there was all of this. We had our Western Christian scientific ideals, but anything past, really anything past like the edge of
Russia, like the Ural Mountains, maybe.
Not even Russia, man. You're talking like once you get out of Europe,
right? Yeah, I get you.
You go past like Poland,
yeah, and Central Europe,
and everything is magical, and all the people have some type of weird connection with nature and mysticism that we don't understand.
They all have secrets, yeah.
And it built more and more like the further you went. If you're talking like India, China, Japan, that's where they're like, oh, there's so much magic in these lands.
That's interesting because we took that again back in the mid 1900s with the hippie movement and all that Eastern spiritualism that really took hold.
Absolutely. We talked a little bit in the first episode how this is going to be the link between Fox Sisters and George Adamski. I think we talked about that.
I think we did. We might have mentioned it.
It fills the gap between pretty well. You had them when we're talking about how does a religion factor in with the rising science.
Yeah.
Then you have George Adamski later on and the rise of the UFO movement, and we're always answering that question. The Fox Sisters, how does religion factor in with the rise of science? Well, spiritualism, ghosts, demons, otherworldly beings. By the 1940s, 50s, 60s, it's aliens. That's how it factors in.
Yeah.
And in the middle, this is where we're at.
Yeah.
One of the Fakir of Ava's inspired people or imitators or whatever you want to call them was a magician named William Warner, who also was known as Count Louis Hammond, but performed as the magician Chiro.
Ah, yes.
Not Cheerio, but Chiro.
Chiro.
Now, he was born in Ireland, but Chiro claimed that he traveled to India, where he, too, had learned the secrets of the masters there. And exploring the world brought him to Egypt, because he's just traveling, learning all this mystical knowledge. He travels to Egypt, and he obtained the severed hand of a mummy.
Oh.
And apparently, this hand's spirit wanted to communicate with the living. He said it belonged to a princess who died in childbirth. I guess now that she was dead, she had access to the vast wisdom of the universe, because that's what you get when you die.
Why not?
I guess that's your death door prize.
Oh, yeah, it's a pretty good door prize.
Instead of a chicken, you get, like, unfettered knowledge.
Man, sounds great. I read that Chiro is from chiromancy, which means palmistry.
Oh, that would make sense, yeah.
It's interesting that he has a hand. I don't know.
Yeah, that's probably why.
Yeah. And it reminds me of that awesome horror movie we just saw recently.
Oh, Talk to Me.
Oh my God.
Oh, Talk to Me. Talk to Me was great.
Yeah, that was amazing.
It's funny, I slept on it. Like, I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to it when it came out because I thought initially it looked kind of silly. And then everybody kept saying, like, Talk to Me is amazing. Talk to Me is amazing. I was like, yeah, it's, October, it's spooky season. All right, let's give it a shot. And I went in with reasonably low expectations. And I'm kind of bummed that I didn't see it in the theater and stuff, because it was an outstanding movie. I can't say enough good things about Talk to Me.
Yeah, it was great. And it reminds me so much of this situation because, it was just a conduit to the hand was a conduit to the afterlife.
To the afterlife.
And this is really cool. All right.
Yeah. Yeah, so this hand that he had would act through him and could deliver mystical messages to anyone who paid a ticket to see his performance.
Yes, of course. It's got to put food on his table here.
Now, it's pretty likely that the hand was fake. It was probably, honestly, the paw of a monkey.
Okay.
But His act was so successful that he ended up doing readings for some of the most famous celebrities of the time. We're talking Mark Twain, Oscar Wilde, Grover Cleveland, Thomas Edison, and the Prince of Wales.
All right.
And he also performed for Lord Carnarvon. Now, remember that at the time, spiritualism is like a parlor event. It's something that you have at a party, like a birthday clown or an inspirational speaker. We tend to think now in the more modern world of people using spirit boards or conducting seances in a very deliberate spiritual has a different meaning now, but like a very deliberate attempt to contact the undead.
Yeah.
Like we are sitting down and we believe very deeply in this and we want to engage with the afterlife. At the time, though, in the late Victorian period, it's more of like charades. It's just kind of a fun game that you do.
Okay.
So some people believe in it, some people don't. There's a lot of talk about it, but the takeaway is that it's very, very, very popular.
Okay.
And this popularity coincided with the rising theosophy movement in the West, thanks to one Helena Blavatsky.
Yay, Helena Blavatsky, yay!
Do you want to say what you know about Blavatsky?
I know that she is the co-founder of Theosophy. Is that right? Did I say that right?
I mean,
Theosophy?
Theosophy,
She's
yeah,
co-founder.
she's sort of the co-founder. I mean, she had a what was his name? The other guy,
know.
Henry Steele Olcott.
Oh.
Olcott is the guy who was like, he was her right hand, kind of, sort of. He pushed her story in such a way that he is the one who actually made her the legend that she was. Blavatsky would only have gone so far herself without Olcott as a champion of her.
Okay.
She's a Russian mystic, and she spent her life, according to her, traveling the world and gathering esoteric knowledge from a secret group of individuals known as the Masters of Ancient Wisdom. And I mean, this again, like this is the same story that the magicians are telling over here, and they're using this and they're starting to influence each other.
Right.
So among Madame Blavatsky's claims is she traveled to Tibet. She studied at a secret monastery, just like Christian Bale and Batman.
Ah, yes, exactly.
But instead of learning to fight from Liam Neeson, she learned clairvoyance, telepathy, astral projection, and how to make herself and objects invisible. So less like Batman and more like Alec Baldwin in The Shadow.
That must have been so boring. Like, because it's not real. None of it's fucking real.
No.
So she must have just stood there all day long staring at like a bowl. And there was this other dude on the other side, and they just stared at the bowl all day, and the bowl didn't move. And then she'd like just go back to her little place where she slept that night.
Like, oop, I didn't do it.
Yeah, and then maybe convince herself over time that she moved it a little bit.
There is a lot of debate over whether she even went to any of these places. Like, did she even go to Tibet? She might not have. Yeah.
This is the stuff that drives me crazy, though. It's like, even if she did, all this like telepathy and telekinesis stuff, it's just got to be so boring. Like, it sounds exciting. Like, I'm going to go into this like program and learn how to do this.
Yeah.
But because I'm sorry to say it's not real, nothing happens.
Right.
And so you just do nothing.
Pretty much.
Like, I had a dream once that I could move objects, and it was the most incredible power. It was the most incredible feeling waking up from that dream. And I was convinced that morning, like, it was so real that I could move objects. And then as the sleep wore off and I became more cognizant of the day, I was like, okay, so that was a dream and that's not real, and that power was gone, and it felt so empty and everything felt so normal and boring again. And in that moment I realized what it's like to want, like, we all want to be special and we all want to have these abilities. And I felt in the span of like 15 minutes, the power and then the loss. But remembering the power, I understand the draw that we have as human beings. We truly do, to want to be these things. And I don't blame people for wanting this. I don't blame people for her wanting this. But she was also like a a charlatan, I think. So,
Yeah, she was a charlatan.
There's all the charlatans, but there's also just the people that really want this to be real.
Yeah, I get it. I get it
too.
They sort of prey on that idea that there is more out there than just this reality. Mm-hmm. And it's tempting, man, because this reality kind of sucks.
It really does.
It sort of does.
Kind of does.
There's good times and there's bad times.
Sure.
But I think a lot of reality is just kind of mundane. Mm-hmm. And that's probably the worst of all, is that you're just like, okay, I'm going about my life. Can't do anything special, you know? We want to be able to shape our world more than just this. Mm-hmm. And what's funny is that I think if this was real, and if you really could make objects levitate, and that was the norm, I think we would probably be bored by that too. And we would be like, well, we should be able to make them disappear. Like we're always, I think there is something intrinsic in human nature that drives us to try harder, to try to make our situation better, to do the next thing. Mm-hmm. And that's why human beings have been successful throughout eternity.
Right. It's part of our evolution, I think, to want what we don't have.
Right.
And that is a strength, I think. It's also it's a terrible thing because a lot of people suffer underneath that idea. Mm-hmm. But it is part of who we are as human beings, I think, is just wanting that thing that we don't have. And you're absolutely, I think that's such a good point. Like if we all were able to levitate a glass, we'd be so bored by it.
Right.
And so it's not that. It's not the levitation. It's not the mind reading. It's the fact that we don't have it.
Right. Yeah. There should be something more somewhere. Mm-hmm. Right. That's the idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the key to a lot of it. Like, I think that is cryptids.
Yeah.
A lot of times is there should be something else out there that's not just the natural world. Like we don't want the normal reality that's presented to us. We want the next thing. We're questing for it.
Right. Because facing ourselves as we are is very scary. Mm-hmm. And facing the world as it is scary. When you can move one step beyond that and you can fill your time with those ideas, it's a very safe, cushy, lovely place to be in because it's like, it's not this.
Right. So after learning all these supposed techniques in Tibet and the Far East, Madame Blavatsky returned to New York, but unlike the Shadow, she didn't start fighting crime. Instead, she founded Theosophy.
Also quite badass.
I guess. Her Theosophy combined the esoteric knowledge that she claimed to have gathered in the East with cherry-picked Western religious principles. And the core of the movement is the idea that there is some kind of ancient wisdom that, once imbued, can unlock powerful abilities in any human. Kind of like the Force in Star Wars. Practitioners believe that once this knowledge is disseminated to the right population, it will overthrow traditional religions and humans will be free from the yoke of religion forever. But to do that, one must study the dark, esoteric nature of the world and put aside their personal views and beliefs and give themselves over to a higher power, the power of divine wisdom.
And if it doesn't work, if you're not able to make it work for you, you're not worthy.
That's the thing, right? That's the thing. Fault. It's like they put it on you. Oh, well, you couldn't do it. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because as we talk about this, I keep thinking cults. You know, I keep thinking Keith Raniere, of course, because Keith Raniere is probably the goofiest cult leader of them all. But all of these things are exactly the way cults get their little tentacles in you, their little claws in you, and hold on, right?
Mm-hmm. No, it's not working for you. Well, you're not truly giving over to the truth.
Yeah, you have to try harder.
You need to try harder. You also need to up your money, your monthly payments.
Well, that too, right? Uh-huh.
Yeah, like come on now.
Now, it should come as no surprise to our listeners that Blavatsky's personal powers, supposedly learned from these mystical masters, were nothing more than magic tricks. In what's probably her most famous conjuring, she and a group were at a picnic in, like a breakfast picnic, in the countryside of India. When they set out their blanket and their tea, they realized that they were one tea set short. Do you know anything about this? Okay, so they go out to have like a nice picnic breakfast, They lay out their tea set, and they're missing a cup and saucer. They're one tea set.
Serious Jesus vibes. Okay.
So Blavatsky, she says, it's okay. And she walks the onlookers to a spot, just a random spot in the ground, and she says, dig here. And lo and behold, they found a teacup and saucer buried 6 inches underground. And the designs on the cup and saucer matched the one from the set.
That is an excellent magic trick.
Right?
Yes.
She said, I produced this with magic.
Wow.
Now, as with our Fox Sisters series, I'm going to invoke the biographical provision in the International Brotherhood of Magicians bylaws and explain what happened here. Although I probably shouldn't even have to, because Blavatsky wasn't claiming to be a magician, but a real master conjuring some kind of mystical arts. But, okay. It's pretty clear that Blavatsky... Well, do you want to take a stab at what happened before I say this?
I mean, I wonder if, like, she had planned this picnic for many months, and she had somebody bury the cup at a location, but gave the ground time to kind of heal above it.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's pretty clear that she had a teacup and saucer buried in sight in preparation for the effect. What's important to know is that, according to her follower, Henry Olcott, again, the one who's like espousing her stories everywhere, Blavatsky told the group specifically where to have tea that morning. Olcott says, although she had never been before, she directed us where to go, describing a certain small mill. We reached the spot she had described and found the mill. So she had never been there, but she knew that there was a mill there. And she said, we'll go have breakfast over by the mill.
Because she's magical.
Uh-huh. This is one of those unspoken tenets of magic. The effect almost always begins before you realize it's beginning. The best time to do the dirty work is always before you ask someone if they want to see a trick. Because once you tell someone you're doing magic, they get really eagle-eyed. The magic of Blavatsky wasn't that she buried the teacup, but it was that she very casually convinced the group to have tea at that exact spot, that exact day. It was all a very carefully controlled act to showcase her supernatural powers. During her tours, she spent time in Egypt, and she even met with Gaston Maspero, the director of the Egyptian Museum. It's right up her alley, right? I mean, think about it. There's a ton of activity. They're discovering all kinds of secrets about the culture, religious practices of ancient Egyptians. It's precisely what Blavatsky's talking about in all of her pamphlets and her lectures. There's no question that Egypt has this like mystical veil over it. Uncanny ancient structures, long-lost mythology, modern recreation, all of these things make the region very appealing for Lord Carnarvon, who, you know, he's had parlor shows with Chiro. You know, he's very into this theosophy, the spiritualism that's going on at the time, because everybody was. All of the elite are. So it's no surprise that by 1905, he headed to Egypt. And he immediately fell in love with the country. He starts going on day trips to see the ruins, the excavations, and he's just like amazed by what's coming out of the sand.
It's an incredible place.
It's really cool, yeah. Yeah, and just like that time, man, where every day they're like, oh, we found this, you know? Here's a tablet with a bunch of writing on it, right?
Yeah,
like,
and think what it is for like the mind of the person in the early 1900s. Like, they didn't have internet, they weren't able to go on Google Maps and look at what, I mean, there's just a lot they weren't able to know.
It must have been so cool.
Probably, I mean, it blows the mind now, I think, to go there, but imagine then.
So remember, he's got all this money. He's like, dude, this is my thing, man. I got to get on this. So he meets with Gaston Maspero, who's director of the Egyptian Museum, and he says, I want a concession. I want to dig here. Remember, these concessions, they're not given out lightly. You know, these are very specific places, essentially authorization to dig in an area.
So he's like, but wait, I'm rich.
But wait, I am rich.
Yes, of course, you can have whatever you want.
So yeah, I mean, I'm sure that he greased some palms, right? And he secured a concession to dig at Deir el-Bahari, which is one of the places Howard Carter had cut his teeth. And almost right away, Carnarvon has something to show for his efforts. The dig produces a mummified cat preserved in its own sarcophagus.
Aww.
And this must have really excited him because he immediately sent it to the inspector, the new inspector, a man named Arthur Weigel. Now, in one of those so random, I can't make it up moments, Weigel was living with a roommate, a down-on-his-luck, recently disgraced ruffian named Howard Carter.
Oh.
Weigel comes home with a cat's sarcophagus and puts it on his bedroom floor. He falls asleep that night, and Weigel has a nightmare that there's a cat clawing at his feet. It's real enough to wake him up, probably because he actually owned a cat, and his cat was probably having some adventures in his bedroom. Yeah. But he sits up to survey the room, and he sees that the cat's sarcophagus has broken open, and the mummified feline body is sitting on his floor.
Whoa.
Yeah, this legit happened.
Wow.
Right.
Do you think the cat got into it?
I think that the humidity change bringing it out of the tomb, and coupled with then the humidity change at night, probably caused the old wood to crack and fall apart. And as a cat owner, it's very likely that Weigel's cat was the one that decided to play with his toes at night.
Oh, yeah, as they do.
But you can understand how it must have terrified him. He later relates the incident with kind of a healthy skepticism, but it's the first in a very long line of supernatural events that will surround the relationship between Lord Carnarvon and Howard Carter. The thing is, Weigel, he takes archaeology really, really seriously. He might not have fully believed the secrets about curses and all of that stuff, but he treated the excavations with the utmost respect. In fact, 16 years later, when Carnarvon is outside Tutankhamun's tomb cracking jokes, Weigel commented, "If he goes down into the tomb in that spirit, I give him 6 weeks to live."
Damn.
His prediction was almost right. Carnarvon was dead 4 weeks later.
Whoa.
But we'll get back to that. So, Carnarvon's cat, this is like total fucking inspiration for this guy, right? He's like, oh shit, I can do it.
Yeah.
He continues to just feverishly dig. And he unearths a wooden tablet with hieroglyphic writing carved into it. And this is the inscription. It's an account of a battle and a defeat.
Ooh, cool.
It's really cool. Ends up being a legendary artifact. The linguist Sir Alan Gardenier said, "No single inscription has been more important in the last 10 years after its discovery."
Wow,
Yeah.
Cool.
So this is a great thing, and it sets Carnarvon to possibly be among Theodore Davis and these other really legendary archaeologists. It's a shame that the tablet was cracked.
Ooh.
And it's even more of a shame that Carnarvon's excavation probably cracked it. See, he didn't do anything half-assed. You get that, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is all whole-assed.
Puts his whole butt into
Puts the whole ass into it.
Backs it all up.
Even digging for artifacts. He went hard. Daniel Meyerson said, digging first in one spot and then suddenly switching to another, he proceeded erratically, without any method to his madness.
Okay. So he was passionate but completely unorganized.
Oh, he had no idea what he was doing. Yeah.
I mean, did any of them really know what they were doing? I bet the locals probably knew what they were doing.
There was an influx of legitimate archaeologists to the site.
Yeah.
But they were backed by these businessmen, bankers, the money, right?
Yeah.
And the thing is, a lot of times the money was willing to just kind of be like, okay, I trust you, I'm going to fund you, you let me know what you got. Carnarvon is there, and Carnarvon is like, I'm involved.
He's the money and the dig.
Yeah, he's like, we're going to dig, let's go here. Oh, how about this? How about that? Like, he's all over, and he's dangerous because it has to be handled with care. You can't just find something, pull it out into the air, because like we saw with the cat sarcophagus, the humidity change is going to be bad for the wood. You have to catalog everything. there's no photography at the time, really. So you can't take pictures of stuff. Remember, Howard Carter's first job was coming in and sketching everything.
Yeah.
Like, it's a slow process. Carnarvon is not a slow guy.
Yeah.
So this cavalier nature is really hard for Arthur Weigel, the inspector. It's his job to make sure that these digs and the artifacts are handled carefully. And also, you know, we said he might be a little bit worried about waking some vengeful spirits.
Yeah, so he's down with this whole curse idea. He knows about it.
He's just on the fringe, right?
Okay.
He's like, I don't know. I think we gotta respect it.
So, but he brings a cat into his house, though. Like a mummy cat.
The sarcophagus, yeah. Yeah, and put it on the floor of his bedroom.
So he didn't seem to worry about that.
No, I don't think... I think it was less that and more the defacement of the tombs that he was concerned about.
Okay.
Yeah. He expressed his displeasure with Carnarvon to Gaston Maspero. But the problem is, you know, that's a lot of money coming to the Egyptian Museum, and Maspero doesn't want to lose this guy. He doesn't want to lose the money. He's like, oh no, we gotta have this, right? So it's clear to Maspero that he needs to not only temper Carnarvon, but he needs to partner him with someone who will handle the archaeology with more care. Luckily, Maspero and Weigel know the perfect man for the job. Howard Carter. Howard Carter never lost interest in Egyptology, and he watched as artifact after artifact is being pulled from the desert. His old patron, Theodore Davis, continues to excavate the Valley of the Kings and is just uncovering... He uncovered like 60 tombs, dude. Wow. He's like tomb after tomb, and Howard Carter is just off in Cairo like, okay.
So he's not really in the business right now. He's all jaded and like...
No, because ever since the fight with the French tourists...
Oh, right, yeah, okay.
He's been gone. Work. No, he can't work. He's out. He's selling watercolors on the streets of Cairo, and he's like, when tourists come in, he takes them through the bazaars. He might take them to see the digs and the ruins and stuff like that, but he can't do any digging himself because he's ruined all of his connections.
Okay.
Carter and Carnarvon's meeting is one of those magical historical moments. Like, individually, they were only half of their potential, with Carnarvon just kind of tossing aside objects and artifacts that didn't interest him, and Carter totally disgraced, like, dealing with fucking local tourists, you know? But together, they inspired each other and soared to their greatest potential. This is like Bonnie and Clyde, Butch and Sundance, Pierre and Marie Curie, and Smith and Wesson's pizza shop.
Right.
They complemented each other in this magical way, maybe in more ways than one. In recent years, historians have begun to cast a more critical eye over the predominantly heterosexual relationships of the past. Take Oscar Wilde and Alfred Douglas, Virginia Woolf and Vida Sackville West, or Tennessee Williams and Frank Merlot. There's even a pair of ancient Egypt royal servants. I'm gonna attempt these names here. Khnumhotep and Nyanka Ka'um, who are believed to be gay lovers. They're in the depictions, they're always entwined together.
I read about them. Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting thing because it's like all throughout history. It's not like it's very much in the fabric of our history.
Yes.
And it's horrible that it's not like
just sidelined.
It's just
we
sidelined.
just don't talk about it.
You know, and I
this is
okay.
This is the really good friends or like roommates or the Persephone, or is it Persephone?
No, it's Sappho.
Sappho and her friend, right? Yeah, Sappho and her friend.
Yeah. It's a shame. I mean, it's a damn shame. The whole thing is a damn shame that they had to be, that they felt that they probably had to be a little secretive about it.
And they
through
did.
The years.
I mean, you totally did.
They had to. But anyway, it's very interesting. So you're saying that more and more people are starting to think that maybe these two were a couple.
Yes.
Maybe.
So William Cross wrote a biography on Carnarvon's wife, Almina. He's the only person to ever write a biography on her at all. And he contends that Carter and Carnarvon were more than good friends. Carter, throughout his entire life, never married, had no children, and preferred to spend his time alone. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean anything on its own, but one of Carter's guides claimed that he would see, quote, boys and the occasional dancing girl. And the archaeologist Howard Plenderleith, who worked with Carter at the British Museum, claimed that he knew, quote, something about Carter that it was not fit to disclose. And for Carnarvon's part, he wasn't ashamed of expressing his affection for Carter in his letters. In a 1923 letter to Carter, he wrote, I have been very unhappy today and did not know what to think or do. There is only one thing I want to say to you, which I hope you will always remember. Whatever your feelings are or will be for me in the future, my affections for you will never change. I'm a man with few friends, and whatever happens, nothing will ever alter my feelings for you. I could not rest until I had written you.
That's so sweet.
Isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. This was actually specifically after they had a little disagreement.
Yeah, okay.
And I think it's really telling and very touching that he wrote and wrote with such language like that.
Yeah.
According to Cross, Carnarvon's wife Almina referred to the men's relationship as a special or romantic friendship. So it's never really spelled out. And it's hard, like, looking back on these things where you're always guessing, right? People are not alive. We can't talk to them. We have no account of it.
Yeah.
Carter's certainly not writing about it amidst his, like, Egypt discoveries, right?
Yeah.
But I think there's enough circumstantial evidence to raise questions about their relationship. And in a world where history is so frequently hetero-washed, I think it's really important to discuss non-hetero relationships, especially when we don't have the complete picture. Whatever the nature of their particular friendship, the bond between these men was immediate, intense, and lasted until Carnarvon's death in 1923. But their first order of business is to get back out in the desert and get fucking digging.
Yeah, get in the dirt.
However, there's a problem with this, and that problem is Theodore Davis. So you might remember from our last episode, we've been talking a little bit about him. He's the American businessman. He employed Howard Carter when he was still in good standing. And he's also the guy that Carter sold some black market artifacts to.
Okay.
Being like, oh, hey, Theodore Davis, I just saw these artifacts and I think they're yours. I don't know what happened, but I can get them for you. Like that sort of stuff, right? So at the time, Davis owns a very special land concession that allows him, and only him, free reign over the Valley of the Kings. And Davis is taking full advantage of this authority. From 1905, when Carnarvon started digging on, Davis found over 30 tombs, including the tombs of the parents-in-law of Amenhotep III, and possibly the tomb of Akhenaten. The identity of that particular mummy is still in question to this day, by the way. Yeah.
Okay.
And you gotta put yourself in the mindset of Carter right now, right? Where, like, he's watching this happen. Theodore Davis has the entire Valley of the Kings, dude. It must have been brutal. Like, that's his dream. He's never realized it. And this dude's finding all these fucking tombs. He's like, oh, here we go, you know?
That's really rough.
Yeah. This is like the pinnacle of archaeology to Carter, right?
Yeah.
He's been chasing this since he was a kid. Since he was that little kid going to the halls, sketching the things while his father was out doing his own art, right? So he is determined to make his own monumental find. And now he's got Carnarvon behind him, and he's like, this guy with his finances, I'm going to get my dream. And that must have been even more frustrating when Theodore Davis declared that he had found another tomb, Akhenaten's son, the boy king Tutankhamen.
No way.
Or so he thought. So Davis, his hired archaeologist, remember, it's always businessman and archaeologist. His archaeologist was a man named Edward Ireton, and they had located a shallow pit in the Valley of the Kings. that they called Kings Valley 54 or KV 54, which was actually just like a cache of buried embalming supplies. But among them was a piece of linen, and it had writing on it, and the writing read, "The good God, Lord of the two lands, Neb-Kepru, beloved of men, linen of the year 6. And you have to understand that Neb-Kepru is what Egyptologists call the cartouche name of Tutankhamen.
Oh, okay.
It's one of 5 names. All the kings have 5 names.
Okay, just to confuse us
just
more.
To keep everything
That's
confusing.
great. Yes,
Yeah.
I love
Okay.
that.
So when you have your birth name, right? Mm-hmm. But then when you assume the throne, you take 4 additional names and you add them to your birth name. This links you to the gods. Two of them are Horus names, and then there's a Nebti name. Both of those are gods. And then you'd also take a throne name.
Cool.
So,
wow.
So, anyway, all that is to say that Davis found this linen with Tutankhamun's cartouche name on it. And so he's just convinced. He's like, oh, I found the tomb. And this was further confirmed when another of his archaeologists, a man named Harold Jones, found KV 58, or what they're calling the Chariot's tomb. And this was a single chamber, 25 feet underground, that contained a strip of gold foil. And on that gold foil was a depiction of Tutankhamun riding in a chariot. And so in Davis's mind, he's like, there it is. We found it.
Yeah.
The reason that they were willing to just overlook Tutankhamun and not expect something more grandiose from him is that he wasn't really considered much of a ruler.
Right, I remember thinking that. Like, I remember hearing something like that. Like, we're the ones that made him famous, I think, right? Like, or was he already, was it a confusion of the time that they didn't realize how famous he was?
The thing is, Tutankhamun, he ascended to the throne at 9 and he died at 19. So he's only got 10 years of rule. And he ascended really as like a small child.
Yeah.
He's 9 years old. Yeah. His father, Akhenaten, had reigned for nearly double that time. And Akhenaten had this like glorious tomb at the Royal Wadi. The thought at the time was that Tutankhamun, he'd only ruled for 10 years. He wasn't nearly at the scale of his father. He was probably just nothing, right?
So
like
in the 1920s, we were looking at the timeline.
Yes.
And determining because of the timeline, he probably wasn't a big deal.
Yeah, especially he's just a young kid. Like, what could he have possibly done?
Okay,
right?
gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah, so they didn't think much of him. They didn't expect a grandiose tomb for him.
Yeah.
Shortly after he took his father's place, Tutankhamun commissioned his own burial tomb. But, and this is the other thing, he died prematurely.
Yeah.
So his advisor, Ai, took his place. That's A-I, Ai. Now, Ai likely took Tutankhamun's tomb for himself and relegated the deceased boy king to a less opulent burial chamber. Ai's tomb, WV-23, or West Valley 23, that had been found way back in 1816. Ai, for himself, had served several pharaohs before Tutankhamun, including Akhenaten. And he had seen philosophies kind of come and go as the different rulers came in and tried to like change things to better fit themselves and their situations.
What a job.
Yeah.
Because he probably had to change his own ethics and beliefs to fit so he didn't get killed, probably.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
This is kind of an old reference, but when I think of I kind of think of Sam Neill from The Tudors.
Yeah.
Kind of like running in the background, manipulating everything in the background, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's a deep cut. I'm not going to make an Anne Boleyn joke. I said deep. I had that was my joke. That was my joke that I'm not going to do it.
Nice.
Thanks.
You know about this? What Akhenaten's philosophy was?
Well, I think that there was one god instead of many.
Right.
And that it was the sun god, and because of that, he wanted to kind of force everybody to turn over to this new monotheistic belief, and didn't he get rid of all the...
Yeah, so up until Akhenaten's time, Egypt was polytheistic, many gods. And Akhenaten came in and said, no, there's only one god. That god is Aten, the sun god. And he founded a religious movement called Atenism, mostly monotheistic. Seems to function more like a cult actually, with Akhenaten serving as something of a figurehead of the cult. The members, they worship the sun god Aten, which is often depicted hovering in the sky with lines coming off it, like we draw the sun today. A fascinating side note, ancient aliens theorists like Eric von Daniken like to point out that these murals of sun-worshipping Egyptians are clearly evidence that they were being visited by UFOs in the past. Like to him, you got these balls in the sky and they're aliens, right?
Yeah.
They're UFOs, but they're not. That's just how they drew the sun.
It's part of their religion.
Yeah, it's literally the way that we draw the sun. It's a circle and then some lines coming off of it. Same thing.
Yeah.
Not a spaceship.
It hasn't changed. The sun, the picture of the circle and the lines is a perfect depiction of the sun. It
Totally.
hasn't changed in thousands
Yeah,
of years.
just the same.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Akhenaten might have co-reigned with his wife Nefertiti because she's often depicted doing kingly things like riding in chariots and worshiping the sun. Those are things that kings do.
Yeah.
There's even some speculation that she actually assumed the throne after Akhenaten's death, but it's hard to tell due to what happens next. At some point after Akhenaten died, there was this like brief period where two other pharaohs ruled, and then Tutankhamen took the throne. He immediately started abolishing his father's sun cult and just destroying all the iconography related to it. Tutankhamun's consorts, they smashed statues, they defaced murals, and generally they painted his father in a really terrible light. They started referring to Akhenaten as criminal, enemy in documents, and they generally just like struck him from the historical records.
Yeah. He had a real problem with his dad.
Yeah, it's something happened, like, and again, who the hell knows?
Yeah.
But yeah, so there was Akhenaten, then there's two pharaohs that we don't know much about, and then Tutankhamen came in and was like, get rid of all of this shit. We're going back to polytheism. Everything he said was wrong and a lie. There's a lot we don't know about the cult of Aten and the brief period between Akhenaten and Tutankhamen. There's been a lot of speculation that Nefertiti actually took over and elevated her own daughter to power during that time. And she might have even taken a male name and ruled as a man for 2 years, claiming her daughter was his wife. But scholars are still divided on a lot of this, and a lot of it we may never know. Now, Tutankhamun's advisor and tomb usurper, he also served under Akhenaten. And he'd been a very outspoken supporter of Atenism, going so far as to have an epic poem called The Great Hymn to Aten buried with him. So it's on his tomb. He has this poem.
And that was allowed even though they were like pulling all that stuff. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's possible that all during his service to Tutankhamen, Aten like despised what this kid is doing to his father's legacy.
Yeah.
And so if I was truly a fervent supporter of Atenism, that would explain why he took Tutankhamun's tomb for himself and relegated the young pharaoh to his kind of shitty tomb.
Yeah. So when I took power again, he didn't turn it back into a monotheistic society.
Yeah, so I think the thing is that the country, the Egyptian people were too divided to go strictly back to Atenism.
Oh, yeah. Like, you can't do it again.
So he couldn't just restore it, but he restored a bunch of the principles of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
It must have killed him. It must have gutted him then when he had to, like, order
I think
to have
so.
all that
Yeah.
stuff destroyed.
Yeah. Okay, so Theodore Davis, he found Tutankhamun's name in this tomb. And he says, okay, boy king, he's insignificant, whatever. Found his very modest burial place. We understand I took over, I took the greater one. This is all we're going to get. It's all there is, right? With this, and concluding over a decade of excavation in the region, Davis declared the Valley of the Kings is exhausted. There's nothing left to find here. And he retired from Egyptology.
Well, that's great for Carter.
Howard Carter disagreed. He spent his life studying this region. Remember, he was 17 when he first got here, right? He is convinced that Tutankhamun's still out there waiting to be discovered. And when Davis relinquished his concession in 1914, Carter goes to Carnarvon and he says, you apply for this instead. Even Gaston Maspero advised against it and told Carnarvon it's a waste of time. The valley is completely exhausted. Don't waste your time digging here. But Lord Carnarvon, he trusts Carter. And I think almost more importantly, he's not afraid of a gamble, dude.
Yeah.
Like, he's like, oh shit, so you're telling me that the odds are stacked against this? This is my favorite thing.
Also, like, the man on the ground, the man who knows what's up, is telling him.
Oh, yeah.
His inside man is saying, this is not as stacked against you as you think. I'm telling you.
This is 100%. This is like his horse racing or his boxing or anything like that. You got a man who's coming to you who's like, you should really bet on this. And he's like, yeah, sure, I'll fucking bet on this. This is how I make money.
Yep.
By 1915, they broke ground in the Valley of the Kings. And it's with their final triumphant discovery that we will pick up next time.
What do they find?
Well, it's funny because despite all of this, it's going to get hard before they get there.
He's not going to just, like, find it the first day.
It's not, nope.
Okay.
Nope, not at all. Because also, a little something happens in the 19-teens. I'm not sure if you've heard of it.
Is it the Titanic?
It's called World War I.
Oh, I thought maybe the Titanic.
Yeah.
And they just...
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's
World War I. That makes more sense.
There's going to be a lot thrown in their way before they get there. Yeah.
There I am talking about the Titanic again.
I know,
What
it's
is
all
wrong with
Titanic,
me?
man.
Like,
Yeah.
I did it in the last episode, too.
I think it's just the time period.
I think so.
Yeah, we're there.
That's all I can think
I mean, it
about.
happened during the course of this episode.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've finally seen Howard Carter and Lord Carnarvon come together, and now together they're ready to get out there and actually make the discovery.
Yeah.
And luckily they can finally get where Carter wants to go, even though everybody's saying there's nothing there.
So then next time it's part 3
Part 3,
of Egypt time. That's what I'm naming this episode.
Curse of the Pharaohs, Egypt time?
Egypt
We're gonna call it
time.
Egypt time
Yeah.
instead.
Egypt time.
Well, that's what you do when you're a tourist on one of these like travel adventures.
Yeah.
And you're on Egypt time. Don't
Yeah.
bother me, I'm on Egypt time.
Right, exactly. Exactly. A bad day on a pyramid is better than a good day in the office.
There you go. Thank you all so much for listening.
Thank you for listening, everybody.
Yeah, we'll talk to you next time.
Yeah, talk to you next time.
Thanks for listening to Slaying Monsters. If you like the podcast and what we do, please share it with others or leave us a rating and review. For questions, suggestions, and other feedback, reach out to us, slayingmonsterspodcast@gmail.com, and stay up to date by following us on Instagram @slayingmonsterspodcast. Your support helps us grow, and we are truly grateful to have our listeners and community.